Welcome to the Civil Service Commission meeting of February 15, 2023 for the City of Glendale. Mr. Kwan, roll call.
Commissioner Hartunian, Here.
Commissioner McCarley,
Present.
Chair Astorian,
Yes, here.
and for the record, Commissioner Gazarian is not present.
And it's our understanding that he's on his way.
Yes.
Very good. What's next, Mr. Kwan?
Minutes, consideration of the minutes for the meeting of December 14th, 2022, and January 11th, 2023.
Do I have a motion to approve?
You have a motion.
Second.
Very good. Next. Oral communications, I believe, right?
Do we need a vote?
For minutes? We do-
Good.
we
This
need
is by consensus, I suspect.
All right, then let's take a vote.
Okay. Commissioner Hartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes.
Chair Astorian.
Yes.
Do I read?
Just for the record, Commissioner Gazarian has just come in. Commissioner Gazarian, we're taking a vote on item number 2 minutes. There was a motion that was made in a second, and there were no changes.
I would be abstaining since I haven't had time to hear about it.
So 3 affirmatives and 1 abstention.
Very good. Oral communications. We have no phone calls.
Very good. Let's go to the next item, Mr. Kwan.
Recruitment and examination report.
Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, this is the regular recruitment and examination status report, which represents the current recruitments in process and that our team is currently working on. You'll notice that our team has 60 open recruitments at this time, and that they are in various stages of the examination and selection process. And this report does reflect those various stages. If the commission has any questions about this regular report, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is a note and file item.
Any questions on the part of my fellow commissioners?
There is just one. I turned to the second page, Ms. Adams, and it relates to the Verdugo fire manager. That appears to be a fairly extended period of time for this recruitment action. Does that relate to difficulties in soliciting candidates? If I believe a while ago we were briefed, the candidate must be a firefighter at a management level. It's just a lot of time has transpired.
Yes, I'm going to ask HR staff to come to the podium. It looks like that might be Ida's recruitment, and
Thank
Ida,
you.
you can answer that question.
Good evening, Commissioners. The reason why the recruitment was delayed is because we have a new fire chief. So we were waiting for the new fire chief to come in, and now the minute the decision was made to move forward, we scheduled the written exam that we just actually conducted today. So
Well, the
We're
question was
progressing.
timely and the response was even better. Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kwan, next item, please.
Eligible lists established.
Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the subject before the commission is the regular report that, oh, I'm reading the wrong thing. Excuse me. What item are we on?
At 5.
I've
Excuse me. Okay, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the subject before the commission is this regular report that includes all of the eligible lists that were recently established since our last meeting on January 11th. This report includes the total number of applications and the number of individuals that advanced through the various stages of our examination process. Since our last meeting, we have had a total of 11 lists that were established. 3 were open to the public, 2 were given on a promotional basis, and 6 were both open and promotional. This is also a note and file item. However, if the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions from my fellow commissioners? Hearing none, Mr. Kwan, we can move on to the next item.
Job bulletin for approval, park maintenance supervisor.
Ms. Adams.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. Before you is a request to approve the job bulletin for park maintenance supervisor. You'll notice that the exam is intended to be open to the public. While the last time we recruited for this position in 2017, it was completed on a promotional basis. At that time, we only had 2 internal candidates who met the qualifications to compete, and one of them was selected for the role. This is a supervisory position, which requires that the person work with staff responsible for the upkeep of the city's parks and athletic fields. And today, we do have a challenge of having enough internal candidates to compete. And so we're seeking your permission to promulgate this to the public. The Glendale City Employees Association has been notified of the department's request to conduct an open recruitment and has not expressed any concerns. Tonight, we have Russ Kwan here from our HR department, as well as the department director, Onig Bolokian, and also with him is his assistant director, Coco Panosian, who can answer any questions that the commission might have.
I have some questions.
So, yes, one of our commissioners does have questions, so.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I noticed that on the selection process, the oral interview has been given a weight of 100%. I'm kind of confused. Does that mean that the oral interview can make or break the person regardless of how well they did in terms of any other qualifications? Because I see that a candidate must pass the exam component with a minimum score of 70%. So I understand that someone's presentation in an oral interview obviously says a lot about a person, but I've never seen it before allocated 100% weight. So I wonder
Yes,
what
well-
your thought process is.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, member of the commission. My name is Coco Panosian. I'm the Deputy Director for Parks, for Community Services and Parks, and I oversee the Park Operations section, which this particular position falls within. There is no other exam component other than the oral. So we look at the individual candidates' qualifications, see if they meet the minimum basic qualifications. We will put them through the next round with the help of human resources analysts assigned to the particular recruitment. And once we have those individuals moving to the next phase, which is the oral panel, the oral panel will determine which individuals will move on to the final interview, which would be the creating the eligibility list to allow the department hiring managers to do the final interview for it. So yes, we've only looked at one particular, the oral panel, to determine who moves forward to the final eligibility list. And based on that, we get an opportunity to interview the top 3 candidates.
So if I may, so then what is the purpose of having in this bulletin the notation that candidates must pass the exam component with a minimum score of 70%? Are you telling us that there is no exam component?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ghazarian, the actual oral interview is the examination. So maybe it's a terminology that
I
is
see.
confusing it.
I see.
They
Okay.
must pass the oral examination, the oral panel interview with a 70% score or higher to be eligible for the list.
I see. Now I understand. So if they, and they're given a numerical grade based upon their presentation or response to questions in an oral interview, and that ought to exceed 70% or 70% or higher. And whatever that is 100% of the weight that would be looked at for each candidate.
Commissioner Gazarian, that is absolutely correct.
Thank you, I understand now. Nothing further, thank you.
Just a
Yes,
quick
please. Go ahead.
question, Chair. Was an org chart attached to these materials? And that would have obviated the need to ask, but since I can't find it, the park maintenance supervisor is a first-tier supervisor, meaning that you have multiple maintenance personnel at our various parks and recreational sites. And there is a recreational specialist, number 1, number 2, and what follows is this position?
Commissioner McCarley, to some degree, correct. So we have, our operation is divided into 3 sections, with 2 sections geographically overseeing the regular day-to-day operations of the park. Each one of those sections has a senior manager that oversees the entire operation, including personnel, budgeting, or whatnot. And then the maintenance supervisor is second in command that will oversee approximately about 20 facilities. And there is a senior groundskeeper, which is a crew lead. Now, below the senior groundskeeper, you have groundskeeper 2 and a groundskeeper 1. So essentially, this position is fourth in line of the process, and then there will be a senior manager that oversees this individual, and the senior manager reports to me, and as far as the organization charts, I report to the director of the department.
Certainly makes sense. Then the follow-on question, of course, is one of the minimum requirements is some background in supervision. At this, within that hierarchy that you described, how does one gain supervisorial experience in anticipation of applying for this job? And of course, the reason I ask this is because, as Ms. Adams indicated, there are an insufficient number of candidates within our workforce in this great city who can qualify right now. So what would be the recommendation, that these should find themselves as firefighters first, or police officers gain the experience at a supervisory level and then transition to the Parks Department?
Commissioner McCarley, one way we determine the ability for them to be supervisory skill sets, we have the senior grounds, which is a crew leader. So if you have experience at the crew lead position, you essentially have taken a role of supervising those crews in the field. And we have, each one of those sections I mentioned have at least 1 senior groundskeeper currently serving in that role. If they choose to, they will be moving forward to the next phase, applying and moving forward, because based on them being a senior groundskeeper, they've had the supervisory qualification because they've overseen crews in the field. I mean, there may be others who bring experience from outside, yet now are currently in a different classification within our department, that could also meet that 1 year of supervisory ability and will still move forward to the next round of the oral interview phase. And there could very well be individuals from other departments who have the horticultural skill sets, and they could apply, and if they meet the minimum qualifications of what we're looking for, they will also be potentially be eligible. As of right now, and based on our past experience, we determined that having 2 seniors currently serving may not give us enough of a pool, and we prefer to actually open this up, see what other potential candidates may be from other agencies that are willing to put their name in the hat and go through the process. It gives us a larger pool of candidates to pick from, and we want the best for Glendale, and that's the reason why we're asking for an oral panel.
That's very encouraging. And the final question is, what pool outside of those who work for our city would you be directing recruitment actions? Would it be somebody that works for one of our major landscaping or commercial landscaping companies that are now doing some work here on City of Glendale facilities?
Well, Commissioner McCarley, I don't directly send an invitation to anybody for them to apply. What we've started doing and working with HR is we have the California Park and Recreation Society, which is the agency that oversees members from all cities in the Parks and Recreation Department. So our approach is to ask HR to help us post it through CPRS and have it mailed out to all agencies, all members. You're talking more than 4,000 members up and down Northern South California. That allows individuals within probably close vicinity to Glendale that may be interested in applying. It does expand the ability for us to pull from other cities. But you know, individuals who actually currently serve on a landscape contractor's crew are highly likely eligible because they do similar work on a private basis. I mean, some agencies contract their work out and may even have experience working within cities, so they too will be eligible to put their name in the mix.
It's encouraging. After this is all done, I'd be interested in a report of your success in soliciting candidates outside of your own department, even within the city. It's very interesting, the process. I applaud you. It's challenging.
Thank you. Appreciate it, sir.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Kwan, I think let me ask if there are any more questions from my colleagues. None? We can move on to the next item.
We'll need a motion to,
Move to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Gazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes.
Chair Astorian.
Yes. So now we can move to the next item. In a moment of exuberance, I lost track that we need a motion on that one. But thank you for correcting me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Class specification and job bulletin for approval, Energy Trading Manager.
Ms. Adams?
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you is a request to approve the revised specification for Energy Trading Manager, which was last updated in 2009, and we also have a request to post this as an open job bulletin. The Energy Trading Manager is a management position responsible for the technical, administrative, and management responsibilities of a team performing retail and wholesale energy trading for the Glendale Water and Power Department. And it was last updated 14 years ago. During that time, industry standards have changed, so we are seeking to make appropriate updates as well as incorporate changes to bring the specification up to date. This includes updating the education requirement as well as adding some of the boilerplate language that exists in other classifications. This bulletin was last posted on a promotional basis in 2018, at which time only 2 candidates met the minimum qualifications, one of whom was selected to fill the vacancy. Given the very specific requirements of the position and the limited number of qualified internal candidates, the department is seeking the commission's approval to promulgate this to the public and broaden the applicant pool. The Glendale Management Association has been given an opportunity to review the class specification as well as the request to post the bulletin on an open basis and has not expressed any concerns. We have HR staff here this evening along with Chai Valdez and the Assistant General Manager for GWP, Scott Millen, who can ask any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Yes.
Please go ahead. Would you approach the podium?
Good evening. Scott Millen, Assistant General Manager, Glendale Water and Power. How's everyone this evening?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, in looking at the bulletin for Energy Trading Manager, I look under minimum requirements and jumping over to page 19 from page 18, I note the requirement of 8 years of professional experience in the field of energy, scheduling, trading, including 3 years in responsible mid-management supervisory capacity in the field. Those are excellent requirements, but when I look at the very beginning of the minimum requirements at the bottom of page 18, it starts with knowledge, skills, and abilities, and it says knowledge of city personnel rules, policies, and procedures. While I recognize that at the very end of that page, knowledge of federal, state, and local laws is one that an outside candidate would have to know if they are in this line of work.
Right.
I wonder how an outside candidate would have knowledge of city personnel rules, policies, and procedures if they're an outside candidate.
It's a very good point, Commissioner Gazarian. I believe this is part of the boilerplate that was originally part of this job spec. I would say, since it references me personally, since I've been here since September, I'm a relatively new employee, that city doesn't necessarily mean Glendale. It
I
could
thought you
be
would
any
say
other
that.
city.
I thought you would say that. So it would be fair to then construe that line as knowledge of personnel rules within cities, within municipalities,
I would agree with you.
which one with 8 years of experience in the field you would think would have.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Nothing further from me, thank you.
Any other questions? from-
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I look at this position, and there is so much within the definition of this responsibility. It's almost as if I'm taking a walk down the path that certainly we addressed years ago when we had the Enron crisis and we hedged and bought power. Not that there would be any such inappropriate activities on the part of any of our fine stewards. But if I understand this position correctly, this is in fact an individual who understands the markets, can position this city to buy power at a certain point in time. For instance, buy X hundreds of thousands of kilowatts of power from the Colorado grid, purchase that for delivery during the summer with the expectation that the price paid today on that Ford, I think I'm using the right terminology, that Ford contract
Okay, right.
would be less than that same individual who buys the power on June 1st or the commencement of summer of 2023.
That is correct, Commissioner McCarley. There are risk policies set in place. Each individual in the hierarchy, we have a day-ahead group, we have the manager, we have contracted real-time, and all of them have limited access, very structured buy and sells they can perform, and everything is reviewed, and there's a
Yeah,
process.
it's that hierarchy that I'm interested in.
Yes.
Because not that any of this would ever occur in the city, but the potential exists that somebody with the keys to whatever system allows that purchase of huge quantums of energy equivalent to a million, multi-millions of dollars. Those are significant keys to the financial treasury of this city.
Yes, yes, it very much is, and that's
Now,
why
what-
every deal is reviewed, and there is a limit on the dollars that they can
Per,
spend.
per each one of, now, who's serving, if it's a matter of inappropriate disclosure, please do not answer the question, but is this position currently filled?
No, it is not currently filled.
Has it been filled?
Yes, we
And-
have, we kind of, we're in a conundrum at this point right now.
All right.
We are trying to fill multiple positions. We have an individual who is supporting that position, who was previously in it, who was promoted into another position, both in the same area. So that individual doesn't exceed or go outside of the bounds that are already specified under the risk policy. So he has been supporting us since he promoted out in that previous
All
position.
right, so who's handling the acquisition of power, for instance, which is one of the major components of this job? You?
No.
Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it appears that you have
Yeah,
significant
I really shouldn't
expertise. Did you come from the financial marketplace?
My background is on the engineering, but I've
Oh, it's
also...
engineering, yeah. I'm really, quite frankly, this is one that borders on both, from the standpoint of understanding what the heck you're purchasing, but more importantly, the market and the markets here in the States.
Yep.
In this state, the markets across all the regional power grids, and the markets sometimes across the border in Mexico.
Yes, very, very rarely. There's only one point that's shared with the WEC region, but yes, we do dip into Mexico occasionally. And not us necessarily, mostly the CAISO does.
Yeah, I understand. So there are, but you use the term that's so important, and that is that you have some sort of risk profiles or risk
Risk policies
mechanisms
set up.
that are in place so that if I were hired and I decided to become an errant member of your staff
Yes.
and decided to push the button and buy $25 million worth of power at an inflated price, somebody would be capable of stopping me.
Yes.
And how would that work?
Well, depending on your position in the company,
I'm going to be this trading manager.
well, the energy trading manager is going to review and set up strategies. He'll be involved with term positions, but term positions are discussed at my level with me and with his direct report, who would be Chi. So those, he can't necessarily take a position until it's confirmed that it makes sense for us.
Right, so you do have some sort of reporting and a layer of approval.
Yes.
Does the approval go all the way up? Because we're talking about real numbers here. So everybody
Right.
that's listening, we're not talking about chump change here at $10,000. This is a significant expenditure of money from the budget allocated to Department of Water and Power.
Yes.
Does this reach the level of the city manager when you cross, let's say, 25 mil?
If we ever get to 25 mil on a single buy, there'd be multiple alarms before we got there. There's
That's what I'm
many
looking
things
at,
that have
yeah.
to happen before we get to that point.
But he would have the final say
Yes.
at that particular level. Okay, this is going to be interesting. I certainly approve of the fact, support the fact that you're going outside. This is one of those particular positions in which there's certainly a wealth of talent. It's going to be expensive talent to acquire in today's marketplace.
Yes. We're hoping to find somebody who will fit the mold and can help us head in the right direction.
Yeah, the best thing I say is good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions from my colleagues? I have a question, maybe you can elaborate on it. Sure. How much of the work of this trader or the manager trader involves hedging?
So hedging is done usually at a much larger scale and is further out in term. So we'll look out a year up to 3 years to hedge. So we look at energy or we look at natural gas. That is a high-level, big picture piece of our overall strategy. So our whole risk group reviews that premise. And it usually is involved, besides myself, our general manager is involved in that decision also. So hedging is something that's geared towards minimizing the impact to budget. Say like buying opportunistically natural gas 2 or 3 years out when the prices are low, and avoiding budgetary landslide. Like there was a point in this last year where we had natural gas went up to $20 an MMBTU. Not sure if that means anything to you, but that's very high. I mean, that harkened back to early 2000s when those prices were at that level. Last year, we were seeing prices at $6 an MMBTU. So hedging is something that we use as a mechanism to prevent the impact of large budgetary impacts and smooth out the rough patches. So it is part of our tool sets.
But not particularly for this one person. It's a team that
It's a
gets
team.
involved
Yes.
on hedging, correct?
No, he would go out and he might gather prices for natural gas or prices for energy on a term basis and come back to us with a plan on how we might need to solve issues, say in the forward market. We're looking at having a generator going offline for maintenance or something like that, and we need to supply energy. So we may buy the energy specific, or we may buy the natural gas in lieu of the energy and then make a decision as we get closer to the market, whether we're going to burn the gas or use the energy.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Just one final, do you have a sort of an interdepartmental council so that you have the finance manager
we have an energy risk.
with a finance manager or one of his or her senior reps with you?
Yes.
Very good. If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Kwan, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Gazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes.
Chair Astorian.
Yes. Let's move on to the next item, Mr. Kwan.
Class specification for approval, Recreation Leader Series and Facility Attendant Series.
Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, Before you is a revised class specification for the Recreation Leader Series and the Facility Attendant Series in Community Services and Parks Department. It has become increasingly more challenging to recruit and retain candidates who are interested in working in the positions included in the Recreation Leader Series and the Facility Attendant Series. And we are requesting to revise the minimum requirements for the positions to broaden the applicant pool and to encourage more candidates to apply. In addition to the hiring challenges, it has been determined that the current minimum qualification requirements for the respective entry-level positions are not necessary. Typically, within the Recreation Leader Series, staff is responsible for the department's youth programs, seasonal day camp programs, supervising children enrolled in these programs, supporting a team that provides arts and crafts activities, taking students on field trips, and playing games with the children. The department is proposing to eliminate the experience requirement for Facility Attendant 1 classification and to lower the experience requirement for the Facility Attendant 2 classification from 2 years to 1 year. The Recreation Leader Series and the Facility Attendant Series are hourly positions. They're unrepresented classifications, and therefore the proposed changes do not require review and approval by the bargaining units. Many of these positions are seasonal or intermittent. We have HR staff present, along with Savag Garbadian and Gabrielle Gaglia. They're both here from the Community Services and Parks Department, who will answer any specific questions that you may have.
I'm looking to my left and to my right. And to my right, there is a nod. So please do approach the podium. We have an interested commissioner asking a question.
Yeah. I do, actually.
Good evening, I'm Gabrielle Golia, Community Services Manager, Department.
Good evening, Ms. Golia. Recreation Leader 1 has an additional minimum requirement experience component that appears to have been reduced from 3 months to 1 month. And it makes me think, what kind of a person would have just 1 month experience and not more than 1 month experience? I mean, unless they're going to come from somewhere else and they're still employed, a 1 month experience signifies to me that they didn't like it, they couldn't cut it, they left, and they have 1 month experience, and here they are now. They come to us. The one thing that troubled me further is that, and perhaps you can enlighten me, the education requirement says current enrollment in high school or in pursuit of a GED. So I'm wondering, are we looking to engage those under the age of 18? And what is the general age group of those who may be occupying the position of Recreation Leader 1? That is for starters, and I may have a couple of more questions if you can enlighten me on that.
Absolutely. Members of the commission, the Recreation Leader 1 position is primarily aimed with these changes in the specifications for a high school student. 1 month of experience will determine that they have some experience potentially babysitting, working with their family, taking care of their siblings, but we are looking at a younger population. So we have found that because it's an entry-level position, these people will never be supervising children without direct supervision from a higher level position. So still being enrolled in high school and also just having a very little bit of experience working with kids in any way, shape, or form will qualify them for this position, in our opinion.
And so therefore it is, I assume it's a part-time position, right?
Yes, Mr. Gazarian, it is a part-time position. The high schoolers will need a work permit, so we will be working with the schools and the Human Resources Department to make sure that they have their proper work permits. Most of these are summer-only positions.
And finally, I wanted to see what the difference was between Recreation Leader 3 and Recreation Program Specialist. And other than seeing that the specialist would be also engaged in planning, it seems to be not much of a difference. Is there a significant difference between a specialist and a Leader 3 series in terms of the position?
Commissioner Gazarian, yes. The Recreation Leader 3 essentially serves as an assistant day camp director.
Okay.
So that is a position that will report up to the Recreation Program Specialist. The Recreation Program Specialist will be ultimately in charge of the day camp location, supervising all of the recreation leaders that are at the site and ensuring the safety of all of the children. So there is a bit of a step between a Recreation Leader 3 to a Recreation Program Specialist.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your time.
Move to approve.
Who would need a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Kwan, roll call.
Commissioner Gazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes.
Chair Astorian.
Yes. Mr. Kwong, what's the next item?
Adoption of resolution and report on unclassified positions.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, a few months ago, you requested a report identifying all active unclassified hourly employees who have been in their current position for more than 24 months, and the commission asked that we identify the number of employees occupying unclassified salary positions. Employees in unclassified positions are exempt from civil service, but employees in salaried unclassified positions do receive the same benefits as civil service positions or classified. Salaried classifications are deemed classified under the civil service system unless they are specifically approved as unclassified by the Civil Service Commission via a resolution. And there are 3 types of unclassified positions. Designated salary classifications, where all employees in the respective classifications are unclassified. This would include our apprentice program and our police officer recruit program. Then there are specific positions within a salary classification designated as unclassified by resolution and approval by the Civil Service Commission. Generally, these positions are funded by a grant that may have funding for a specific period of time. And then the third type of unclassified position are the hourly classifications. So over the course of several years, the Civil Service Commission has approved the designation of certain entry-level classifications as unclassified. As I already mentioned, it includes apprenticeship and police officer recruit. So if you look at Table 1, it identifies the salaried classifications which have been approved as unclassified by the Civil Service Commission, as well as the length of each program. Table 2 shows the 18 occupied positions in the apprentice or police recruit program, along with the date that the person assumed the position. Table 3 shows the 13 positions where salaried classifications were approved as unclassified by the Civil Service Commission. And again, those examples normally have a grant funding connected to them. At the October 2022 meeting, the commission also provided direction to formally end the unclassified designation associated with positions previously approved as unclassified if the position number one had not been filled for 2 years. So we have a resolution that is also coming before you to formally end the unclassified designation if the position has been vacant for that 2-year period of time. Lastly, all hourly classifications, again, are designated as unclassified by a resolution and the approval of the Civil Service Commission. Lastly, you will see Exhibit A. Exhibit A is the list of hourly employees who have worked in positions for more than 24 months. The list includes the classification, the date the employee began working in the position, and the total hours worked in each of the last 2 calendar years. As a reference point, 2,080 hours is the equivalent of a full-time employment. Per the Commission's direction, all seasonal, part-time classifications, such as recreation leaders, facility attendants, lifeguards, and library pages, have been omitted from Exhibit A. So what you see in Exhibit A is a total of 106 hourly positions where employees meet the criteria that the Commission asked we report back on. Tonight, we are seeking a motion to adopt the resolution as instructed, and we will note and file this report. However, here tonight is the Assistant Human Resources Director, Amy Martin, as well as 5 leaders from various departments, Community Development, Community Services and Parks, Water and Power, and the Fire and Police Department, who can answer any specific questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. We'll go to my colleagues.
I have a lot of questions.
Of course. Who's going to be approaching the podium for some answers and clarifications?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission.
Good evening. I confess I'm confused. I'm confused because of the following. I look at Table 1 and I see the date classification approved as unclassified as early as April 27, 2005. That's informative to me in the sense that that was an unclassified, there was a classification approved as unclassified for a length of 4 years, but I'm unable to determine then what happened 4 years later in 2009 to that, or does that mean every 4 years it just repeats itself and continues as an unclassified position for a period of 4 years? But what happens to someone that has stayed beyond the 4 years? What happens to them? That's my first area of confusion. I could stop, and you can elaborate if you like.
Certainly. Maybe let me start by answering that question, and then we can proceed with your other questions. Mr. Chair and members of the Commission, Commissioner Gazarian, Table 1 identifies the various apprentice or police officer, recruit, or police communications operator trainee classifications which were approved as unclassified by the Commission. The date referenced is the date Commission took action to approve those specific programs to be unclassified. The column on the right-hand side, the length of the program, is just a reference point to identify the length of the length of time an individual in the classification of electrical line mechanic apprentice, as an example, would remain in the apprenticeship program. If we turn to table number 2.
So before we go, so can you give me the scenario of the police officer recruit that was on August 22nd, 2012, designated as a pilot program unclassified for a length of 6 months, which was then designated as permanently unclassified, I would deduce from the language. 2 years later, August 27, 2014, what happened to that? Does that still exists then as unclassified for a 6-month period of time? And beyond the 6-month period, does the police officer matriculate to some classified position?
Yes. When employees in these respective unclassified apprenticeship programs progress through the programs, whether it's 4 years, 5 years, or in this case of the police officer recruit 6 months, they then promote into the journey level classifications. In the case of police officer recruit, following the 6-month training program, they would advance to the police officer classification.
I see. Okay, so when you were going to go to table 2, perhaps you could address my inquiry as to the employee references 15 through 18, which seems to have start dates of September and November of 2022. Those are just 4 positions that are now in that 6-month length of program unclassified standing, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Currently, we have 4 police officer recruits
Okay.
who are going through that 6-month program.
Okay, and then Ms. Adams referenced the number 13. I assume it's referring to those in table 3, which maybe it's 13 or 14, but that's not really relevant to my question. These are declared unclassified. How do these differ from table 1?
So in the case of table 1, anyone who occupies, any employee who occupies those respective classifications would be unclassified.
Okay.
In the case of table 3, customer service representatives, any employee hired in a salaried customer service representative would be in a classified status, would be a classified civil service protected classification. So the classification of customer service representative is a classified position. However, the department back in 2019 came before commission and requested that one singular position that was grant funded
Right.
be deemed unclassified.
Unclassified.
So that's the distinction between table number 1 and table number 3, where table number 3 identifies select positions within a classification grouping.
Okay, and that brings me to my most confused place. I note that it is asked of us to now adopt a resolution based upon our request some time back for this information to be brought to us. And a resolution formally ending the unclassified designation, which we're informed is attached for the Commission's consideration. It includes the 2 positions in community development referenced above. I'm trying to figure out what are these 2 community development positions that we're ending the unclassified status for them. And then I have a final question about Exhibit A.
Okay. So in 2019, there were 5 classifications, 5 positions that the Community Development Department requested to designate as unclassified. And those positions were to work on a new program, the Housing Subsidy Program, that was adopted by council. It was a pilot program. So as the program evolved and individuals did fill the position, some of those folks ended up applying for other classified employment throughout the city. They ended up receiving those positions. And again, as time evolved and the pilot program was coming closer to what appeared to be an end, the department determined that there was no need to refill those unclassified positions. So those positions have not been filled since. Of those 5 positions, you'll see in Table 3, there are 2 positions remaining as unclassified, the customer service rep and the housing associate. The remaining 2 positions where the department feels are no longer necessary are included in the resolution that Commission requested we bring forth to formally end the unclassified status. Back during the, I believe it was the October meeting, Commission expressed some concern that perhaps a department could in the future fill any of these unclassified designated positions, and requested that we bring forth a resolution to permanently terminate those those positions designated as unclassified in order to ensure that departments could not fill these positions in the future, and if a department had a future need for an unclassified position, that they would come before Commission and request that once again.
Okay, so then finally on the Exhibit A list, I mean, I see the resolution and I see the positions that we are now asked to consider resolving to make them classified, correct? That is what is asked of us. As to what I am looking at, the unclassified temporary positions, be it resolved, it says on page 43 of our packet.
Yes, that
Right?
is correct.
So then when I look at unclassified positions, Exhibit A, there are 2 areas, well, 3 areas. 3 areas. One, and I'd like you to take a look at reference number 23 as an example. Community Services and Parks, an hourly city worker, a position start date of 2017, who's logged well over the 2,080 hours that Ms. Adams or one of us here heard or uttered, 2,171 hours and 2,283 hours respectively. And I'm just wondering, why would that position 5.5 years later, or 5+ years later, be still an unclassified position? I mean, I'm not an employment specialist by any means. I just want to have some clarification as to that item. Also the same as item number 50, the ambulance operator, which has logged 3,000+ hours in 2021 and just 35 hours shy of the 2,080 hours in 2022. And last, but certainly not least, not in my book, items 62, 63, 64, 65, and 95, and there's some in between. The library arts and culture, the librarian assistant, and the library arts and culture hourly city workers. They seem to be, one, for example, the library assistant, the position start date of 2001. That's 22 years. 21+ years. These are all are remaining unclassified, as I understand it. Is there reasoning behind that? Unless I'm misunderstanding the whole thing.
I will, Commissioner Gazarian, I will answer part of your question, and then I will defer to department reps who might be able to respond to more specifics. With regards to Exhibit A contains individuals who hold hourly classifications. So all of these classifications, all of these individuals are unclassified. I will say that in some cases, the employees do work part-time hours, and in other cases beyond part-time, as you've appropriately noted. Individuals who hold hourly classifications have been utilized to supplement full-time workforce, and in recent years in particular, we have experienced challenges in recruiting efforts, and oftentimes hourly individuals do assist with the filling in some gaps while we conduct recruitments, or to further the operational needs of the department. With regards to some of the more specific questions relative to reference number 23 in the Parks Department or the Fire Department, in particular the ambulance operator program, I will defer to the department. But I will just comment on the classifications, the positions in the library. The library is a unique operation in that we have a number of different libraries and they are open beyond a 40-hour a week operation. They're actually, the Central Library, as an example, operates about 76 hours during the week. And so in that operation, they utilize a number of employees holding a variety of classifications to supplement the workforce, as I mentioned earlier as well. But in some cases, you'll note reference number 63. That individual has been working as a library assistant since 2001 with limited hours. Sometimes individuals like the flexibility. They just want to get out and work a few hours, get out of the house. Maybe they're retired. Some of the librarians who work part-time for the city of Glendale hold full-time librarian positions elsewhere, and this is just supplemental income for them. And in other cases, they are students who are going to school and like the flexibility of working an evening shift, a weekend shift. I just wanted to provide that commentary relative to the library based on their operation, as the department director was unable to be here tonight to answer any of the questions you might have. He had a previous engagement with the mayor and the city manager at an off-site location.
There was also an item that I neglected to mention, reference number 55. It's a position that has started in 2010, City Resource Specialist with Glendale Police Department. That seems to be, 2022, 2,500 hours. That's a lot of hours. I've always thought the following, and I don't, again, I'm not a employment specialist by any means. When somebody is an hourly employee, there's a certain degree of a lack of a job security for that employee, perhaps, because it's an hourly employee as opposed to a salaried employee who can rely on a set amount of funds for him or her to then allocate his or her lifestyle and budgetary needs. But at the same time, I understand that there's benefits and disadvantages to the employer. When somebody is on an hourly basis, you don't spend the extra penny by keeping them on salary, but on the same side of the coin, not even on the other side of the coin, there is benefits to be had when you know that you have that person fully committed as an employee of the city. So I don't know how my fellow commissioners feel about that, and maybe I should just stick to my day job. But I thank you. If there's anybody that can tell me why an ambulance operator would put in 3,043 hours and be an hourly employee and not salaried or classified, please tell me.
Commissioner Gazarian, I will defer to Battalion Chief Tucker, who will be able to address that question.
Thank you. Because the fire department often comes to my parents' home and does a wonderful job taking them to the hospital. So I want to make sure people are taken care of in the city. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, panel members. So yeah, the ambulance operators, it's 99% of them, actually probably 100% of them, are all trying to be firefighters. So it's an entry-level position to that ultimate goal of becoming a firefighter. There's a tremendous amount of turnover in this rank. Any individual that's trying to be a firefighter, our goal is to try to get them hired as a Glendale firefighter. However, the timing has to be just right for that to happen. They need to be a paramedic, and they usually come to us as an ambulance operator as an emergency medical technician. So they don't meet the minimum qualifications as a firefighter in that rank. During their tenure as an ambulance operator, we've got 6 ambulances that run, 5 of them are 24 hours a day, and 1 of them is 12 hours a day. the folks that are staffing those ambulance positions, it's a full-time job.
Okay.
So they're working 56 hours a week. It's the same as a firefighter, as a sworn schedule. So we work a 48-hour shift and then have 4 days off. So they get paid overtime once they cross the 40-hour range. So they are in a full-time position right now.
Okay.
As we hire in a fire position, as we open up our academy, if they are a paramedic and they meet the minimum qualifications, then they have a chance to promote as opposed to applying through the open process that folks that don't have that ambulance operator rank have to go and compete with a lot of other people from the outside. Very small pool that are qualified as an ambulance operator and a paramedic to take our test. So we had for the longest time, we started this program in about 2012, had a 3-year cap for tenure in that rank. We only wanted those ultimate driven individuals that wanted to keep putting that high effort to become successful as a firefighter. We have since, because there is so much difficulty in recruitment, there's a lot of other agencies starting ambulance operator programs. We're seeing our numbers starting to dip. Even though our recruitment efforts are increasing right now, we want to try to give them an opportunity to stay in that rank as long as possible so we can ultimately promote them to firefighters.
Thank you. Thank you. That explains it. I imagine there's an equally compelling reason for the Glendale Police City Resource Specialist position to be what it is since September of 2010, even though looks like 2,500 hours have been logged last year on that.
Any other questions for Frank?
That's not, the question is not for you, no. You did an admirable job doing the fire department bit. Let's hear the police department now.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Rafael Quintero, Professional Service Bureau Commander. Unlike the fire department, this position is a little bit more unique from the perspective of them with the ambulance operator. Specifically this one, the person in this current position, he's been there for several years, as you stated. A lot has to do with this person does not want to become a full-time employee or custody officer. Now, that's for a variety of reasons. One, specifically, this person teaches at the academy, and he is an integral component to not only their academy staff, but also the correctional academy staff, and then also provides a support function for us internally within the police department, within our not only recruiting, but training and a variety of other support functions. Specifically, in addition to flexibility, I believe Ms. Martin had mentioned the flexibility portion. This is something that is very important to them, especially when dealing with the video arraignment and the transportation process. The hours need to be flexible per se. So oftentimes, even though the scheduling for video arraignment is scheduled from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., it doesn't always get started at 10 a.m. Normally, sometimes it gets started in the afternoon, and then sometimes it gets started early, depending on the judge's preference. Based on that flexibility, he's able to provide that, which other employees would not be able to meet those gaps that operationally we need.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
I can go on, but I won't.
We are satiated.
Yes, thank you.
Very good. Commissioner McCarty?
All right, I'm going to have to keep this as short as I possibly can. Maybe just ask the fundamental question, but I'm not sure who out there can answer the question because it relates strictly to policy. Simple question, what's the difference between a classified and an unclassified employee? And maybe I could play with it and then correct me as I make so many errors.
Why don't we go to the source directly?
That would be fine. I just wanted to save you from my view of all things. So the question would be the difference between classified and unclassified, with emphasis on benefit packages, emphasis on termination, emphasis on discharge at will in lieu of the protections inherent in a civil service job.
The fundamental difference, Commissioner McCarley, between a classified versus unclassified is unclassified positions, employees who hold unclassified positions do not have civil service protections. They are considered at-will employees. As far as benefits are concerned, salaried unclassified employees, specifically employees who hold any of those apprentice positions, the police officer recruit position, the police communications operator trainee, so all those classifications under Table 1, as well as any employee who holds positions referenced in Table 3, because those are salaried classifications, they do receive a monthly salary and all of the relevant benefits that are made available to classified employees.
So there's no difference from a compensation perspective between those because it falls on us, have designated as classified versus the unclassified. So the same contributions go to CalPERS for those who serve as unclassified employees within the city.
Yes, that is correct, Commissioner McCarley.
And so and this is where I should have as much information, if not more. The primary difference would be the absence of the civil service protections, so that if, for instance, a supervisor, for any reason whatsoever, has a dislike for an unclassified employee, that employee can be terminated on the spot.
The employee would,
Can't come up here.
that is correct. They would not have appeal rights. However, unclassified employees, as referenced in the report, can avail themselves of other opportunities, including the grievance procedure.
Well, the grievance procedure with respect to any CBA, collective bargaining agreement that might be, of which they are a member of an organizing union or GCEA.
They can avail themselves of any type of, they can notify human resources if they feel that they are being treated unfairly, as an example.
Or sue.
Absolutely. They have availability. The Human Resources Department does not distinguish the difference between unclassified and classified as it pertains to any of those issues.
The underlying difference is that they don't have the full panoply of protections that somebody who has gained the identification of classified has. And I guess that's the fundamental difference between classified and unclassified. So from a policy perspective, we who make these decisions, interestingly, it's really us, we could tonight declassify every single employee in this city. Have the authority.
Is that,
Could I respond to that?
yeah.
I don't, go.
First, I do want to respond that they would have state law and federal law protections, so those don't go away. The only thing that they would not have would be certain civil service rules that would not be applicable to them. But beyond the ability to classify or declassify, there are certain positions that have been filled with prior action, for example, of the commission, and now you have made a point to sunset those out, to bring them back at a certain time. The only item that's before you today is the positions that are identified in the resolution. To go through and do a broad, for example, the ambulance program, that was a decision that was made through great participation of the fire department with the city council. There was a whole budgetary component associated with that. So I don't believe that the commission could just easily unravel that entire program without impacting budgets. And that is beyond the commission's ability. That would require council action.
And I fully agree.
And beyond the chair's interest anyways, so.
But I fully appreciate that commentary, and please don't take it from my questions that I have any interest in eliminating the system as is. But in order to understand what we're doing, We are essentially identifying those positions that have been unclassified in the past based upon decisions made by our predecessors at presentations like this, in which we have eliminated those inherent civil service protections for any number of reasons, including some budget reasons. And I think this is one of the reasons why we brought this forward, is whether or not we are doing the right thing by all of our employees, especially those who find themselves in unclassified positions. Now, I don't want to go too deeply into the policy because this would really require a conversation at multiple levels. But for instance, the hourly workers, based upon the fact that I've spent considerable amount of time in a supervisorial role with hourly workers, what we call them on the Fed side were wage grade. But wage grade were protected by the feds with the same sort of civil service protections as salary. So we have a unique situation in this city in which a decision was made that those who work by the hour have perhaps somewhat fewer, not only protections, but significance within the identification of worker. I've never, frankly, seen the difference between a wage grade, somebody who works on the hour, and somebody from a salary position, except for something in California law, exempt and non-exempt, and that's not even applicable. So, I mean, tonight, all we've asked for is this resolution, and that will eliminate a couple of positions from the unclassified table. And so that's probably easy to do. And maybe for another day, not tonight, after consultation with you and others, and Ms. Adams and other senior managers, whether we're doing the right thing, whether there's an advantage to declassifying a lot more people, meaning those who are classified today, classifications eliminated, which would make them subject to that sort of instantaneous discipline. But again, those are policy decisions way above many of our pay
Commissioner
grades.
McCarty, I appreciate the in-depth
Yeah, I'm done.
process that you've
Yeah,
gone
I'm
through,
done.
but we need to move on. So, and I appreciate your time. Our position right now is we're looking for a motion to approve the resolution or disapprove in that manner.
So moved.
I'll second it because it has value.
Oh, maybe you had questions?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Very good.
Most of my questions were answered.
Mr. Kwan will take a roll call.
Commissioner Gazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes?
Chair Astorian.
Yes. Thank you, and I believe next item is item 10, Mr. Kwan?
Reports and information.
Ms. Adams?
Did you,
Yes.
I'm sorry, did you also want to take an action to note and file the report itself? It's
Do we
listed,
need a vote for that?
you did you adopted the resolution, but you can also note and file the report if you'd
Do we
like.
need a vote for that?
Yeah, you do,
Counsel?
if you'd like to do that, then yes.
But do I have to do that? Do we need it?
Perhaps to make it a
Very good.
complete part of your record.
So why don't we take a motion to note and file?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Very good, Mr. Kwan.
Commissioner Gazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes?
Chair Astorian.
Yes. Thank you, counsel. All right, item number 10, Mr. Kwan? Ms. Adams, I'm sorry, we went to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, before you is a informational report on performance evaluation and the return status for the City of Glendale's employees. As you can see, the response rate is 99%, with only 12 evaluations past due, and there are no evaluations on the second list. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer this. Otherwise, this is a note and file item.
Any questions on the part of my colleagues? Hearing none.
Closed session. Reinstatement of police officer, reinstatement electrical line mechanic supervisor 1.
Very good. So we will close the public portion of this hearing, and we'll move on to the closed session.
And we will go off camera. We will report out, but not back on camera. And so we would ask everyone who is part of the second closed session item to step out.